Welcome to Wealthing Talks. I am your host, Alicia Castillo Holley, bringing you real-life conversations from Silicon Valley or somewhere around the world. We will talk about disruptors, angel investments, venture capital, and of course, family offices. Join me along with my children, their families, friends, disruptors, and investors as we explore the fascinating world of creating wealth in a completely different and authentic way. Thank you so much for being with us. It is an absolute pleasure to introduce Pooja Goyal to you. We met many, many years ago in Delhi, and she's been a driving force of change in India, and she's worked everywhere else. Pooja, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Alicia. It's a real honor to be here and talking to you.
And to the audience. Well, listening to, yeah. Okay. So tell us, what are you doing now and how did you get here? What was the path?
Yeah. So, Alicia, as you know, for almost 28 years, I was in the private sector, wearing different hats, either as an engineer, working in the corporate world, or building companies, very briefly, even as an investor. But about 3 years ago, I transitioned to the social sector, focusing on really improving the participation of women in India's workforce, and especially formal workforce. And it was a big shift for me. But if it's okay, I can talk a little bit about my journey, and that'll kind
Yes.
of set the context for how I landed here. I If I look at kind of the last few decades, the first 25 years of my life were a lot about kind of working towards getting freedom to have agency. It was about working hard, studying hard, getting a job, being financially independent, so that you would have the freedom to make your own decisions, your own choices, in all areas of life, whether it's professional, personal, etc. So it came from a small city, and in India, with like middle class, lower middle class family, where the only way to kind of get to that was to really study hard and to get into a good college, and that's what I tried to do. I was fortunate to go to one of the premier institutions in the country, IIT Delhi, studied chemical engineering, and and that really put me on a path where I knew that, look, I would I had the agency to make my own decisions. The second phase of life, about 20, 25, 20 years, were about balance, just everything happening. Um, I had got married, had children. Career was doing really well. I was in the Bay Area for some time, for almost a decade, working with companies like Palm Source and Adobe. Did my MBA at INSEAD, and then as the kids were growing up, parents were getting older, work was really accelerating, getting into senior management positions. It was really about having a lot of balls in the air, and trying to keep juggling and making sure that you keep them balanced. And now that at this stage where the kids are in college, and you really think that I at least feel like life has been kind, work wise, financially, family wise. Uh, Things seem fine now. It's a little bit about relevance and paying it forward. Um, so um, so in the first I as I was building a lot of these startups, working in large organizations, it never occurred to me that I was a woman, or I had, or or that my gender in any way impacted what I accomplished or what I did not. It never even occurred. But I think in the last 10 years, as as I started to mentor a lot of other women entrepreneurs, women leaders, a lot of my friends also started to take on senior leadership positions, building companies. It just so happened you heard the same things over and over again. Some of these things about, um, you know, biases, stereotypes, um, which were sometimes very explicit, sometimes implicit. But then, but I remember one specific instance, which was in COVID. I felt like women were just being disproportionately impacted by COVID, and they were closing some of their businesses in larger numbers, and many entrepreneurs were coming to me for advice on to how to navigate things, whether it was go to market, shift in strategy, etc. And I just on a whim sent out a note, sent out a LinkedIn post and a tweet saying, look, every Saturday I will make myself available from 10 to 12 noon for any entrepreneur who wants to discuss their business plan. And almost 150 women reached out. And over the next year, um, I tried to talk to them. It became so much. Then a lot of my friends got involved and said, "Look, we are happy to talk to some people as well." And so we kind of just formed an informal community called the CEO Club. And as I was going through that process, I realized that a lot of the barriers that women face are very structural in nature, and that, it could be around access, it could be around aspiration gap, which is very which again has to do with gender norms. It is access to skills, access to
Mhm.
markets, access to networks, whether it is mentoring networks, funding networks, and access to capital. So, around these four or five areas, you could just see a lot of these systemic barriers. Um, you know, that of course the stats kind of prove that where only about 3% of venture capital funding goes to women-led startups across the world. In India, it's increased a little bit. I think it's about 5% now.
Wait.
So, so that felt like it required systemic solutions as well. And that is when I decided to join Ashish, who's the founder of Udaiti, and he was thinking about setting up a systems change organization to really bring more women into the workforce. And I've been fortunate now to be driving that work for the last 2.5 years.
Wow, what a journey. And a lot of experiences. I like the way you sort of compartmentalize the stages. I felt through the same.
Yeah,
When I had my kids, when my kids were young, I didn't know how to juggle things. And I just said, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I have to go through the tunnel. And I'm very fortunate because I have kids. Not a lot of my friends had kids or chose to have kids, either men or women. But
mm,
I'm very fortunate because uh, through the challenges that we had, and we kept moving countries, and it was difficult, but we didn't know it was difficult. We were just leaving. But
yeah,
now we're a very solid family with a lot of love and compassion and excitement.
yeah,
And I'm very fortunate, but I could not have foresee that I would be there. And I like the way you frame it, that you studied, you work very hard, and you wanted to have the financial stability to make choices.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Um, if you were with all that you've learned now, and you have two children that are young, with all that you learn now, if you were to write yourself a letter, when you were in your 20s, what are the things that you've learned that you didn't know? That you could tell yourself, hey, I wish you knew this.
Um, I think one is now that I look back on many of these journeys and we move geographically as well. I
Yeah.
think in the first 13 years of our marriage, we had done like four intercontinental moves, lived in 15 houses. We had two suitcases, and you could just move, at a day's notice. And now that I think back, and so it required many transitions, and for both my husband and I. And one thing I learned is that there is always an S curve, um, in the sense that whenever you make a transition, it takes some time for it to reach an inflection point. There is a period when you just have to keep at it, and you have to keep doing it, and you don't see some of the results. And then there comes a point when you suddenly begin to see, oh, people are noticing it, or oh, we this product has just taken off, or oh, a VC uh, a fund approached us for something. But it does take those 3 to 5 years in the initial, that S curve, to reach that inflection point. And then it's extremely important that you ride the wave on top as well and do all the things. Um, I remember when I was building my second company in Teletots, and we bootstrapped it. So we were at like the 3.5 year mark, and I was just feeling quite restless and feeling like we are not growing enough. Yes, we are profitable, but what is the model for scale? How should we be thinking about it? And I talked to one of my very good friends. He's a venture capitalist as well. I said, how should I be thinking about growth? And like I'm feeling like we're not doing enough. And he said, Pooja, just the first 5 years, just be patient, build it up, and then things will happen. And honestly speaking, Alicia, at about the 4.5 year mark, there were companies that were approaching us to set up daycare centers. And we started to get a lot of interest from other companies. They would say, okay, can you set up a preschool for us, a larger school for us? So many opportunities started to come our way. So I think I've seen that with everything, there is an S curve. And when you are younger, you have that impatience, and you feel that you need to get it done fast, and all of the others have it figured out. I'm the only one who doesn't have it figured out. And so that's one thing I'd say to my younger self, is that you are enough. There is an S curve to compounding. And so until you hit that inflection point, you know, keep building systems, keep measuring your inputs, and then the score will take care of itself. Um, I just recently heard this quote from Barack Obama, that he talked about the fact that he'd been in enough rooms where you feel like, there are enough people, there is always that bell curve where, yes, one or two people will be really smart. Most of the people will be average, but there will be people who don't know much. And early on in your career, like at least for me, I would feel, oh my God, everybody is smarter than me, would be very hesitant in speaking up. And then as I've gone through my journey, sat in many different rooms, in hindsight, I feel like, you know, it's uh, there are there are you had enough to offer even at that time and now, and it's important to speak up, and even if you make mistakes at some point, it's all right. And then one last thing, so I guess one is that S curve of compounding. The second is building systems so that you can measure inputs until you can get to outcomes. And the third one is, now that in hindsight I look at some of the experiences which were very difficult ones, um, I feel like those were the periods when I had the most learning, because that was the time I was questioning myself as to, uh, you know, what do I need to do to improve? What do I need to get out of this rut? How do I get better? How do I push myself beyond my comfort zone? When you are at the peak, you are cruising. You are not thinking that, look, you always think it's because of me, because of my discipline, because of my hard work that I'm doing so well. It's only when you're stuck in a difficult place is when you start to question, oh, it could be that the current is not with you, and you're running against the wind, or you need to improve, and that's where some of the step changes happen.
Wow. This is exactly what made me start the podcast is having
Right.
real people telling real stories. It resonates so much with me. I reinvented myself many times,
Yeah.
and I think that I go through periods with it's like a ladder, and I go through periods of intense pleasure, and I figure it out, and this is so great. And then either I get bored or I think, oh, what is next?
Yeah.
And then I go through that steep area that you mentioned, very confusing sometimes. How did I get to do this? Why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
And a lot of questioning. And I can't see the future. All I see is this big wall, and I love the way you frame it. And it takes time. It's. I wish I had learned that before.
I
Um,
know.
I mean, that's why we do this, because there's so many people that I met, both investors and founders, especially investors, the first time investors, or yeah, they don't have to be young investors. It's the first time they start investing in early stage companies. They come to me and say, "What am I doing wrong?" And you're not doing anything wrong. It's just you have to build a model, you have to build a system.
Yeah.
And it is I'm so happy you said that, because so many people need to hear that. And also I have so many people asking me what's wrong with me, why I can't do this. And well, maybe the other people are not doing that either. And maybe they're questioning themselves. I had a coffee with young people here in Silicon Valley, and that I met throughout a lot of presentations. I don't have a lot of time, so I said, let's get together, have coffee, and we can talk about the challenges, not my challenges, your challenges. I mean, let's just share it and create a tribe. And one of the things that all of them said, except one that is American, is that they're all from overseas, and they came here and they said they felt so unaccomplished. And the reason is, in America, there's this culture of really praising, and
Yeah.
and and you have good reasons to praise. Where in other parts of the world, humility, humbleness are values, and the fact that you did something, you were the first one of something, it doesn't matter. It's not something to brag about. So I really like the way you frame it, because we need to step, we need to stop and recognize our own journeys, and be just humane about it. And I love your S curve, because I felt it so much. And then you ride the wave. I couldn't have said that better. Thank you for that reflection. Let me go back to the stage where you are now.
Yeah.
What excites you? What gives you hope, and what stimulates you in the morning when, like, I wake up in the morning and said, "Oh, I can't believe I have another day to live and to do something." What is that trigger for you?
Yeah. Um, so if I can go back a little bit, as I was building some of the startups, like my first startup in the Bay Area, that went under in the downturn of 2001. The second one, we bootstrapped it, my co-founder and I, and we built it over 9 years and sold it. But it was still a small organization, and it was profitable. It was great for that phase of my life, but I still felt I wanted to think about and work on early years education and care at scale. And I feel like with IntelliThoughts, we were still not able to accomplish it. And then the third organization, Avishkar, that I co-founded, um, that was my goal, that we could take hands-on learning, technological learning for school students and scale it. And we tried to do a little bit of it. So there was always this rankling in my head that I've, I I would like to solve a problem at scale. And that was one thing. And the other is, as I was, I'd done these two startups in education, and I'd started to feel as we were growing them. And so when you think about scale, you also think you need capital. And in private sector, then you're thinking venture capital, where you need to grow like a rocket ship because of the way the model is. So in education, when you bring that model in, somehow the focus from child at the center of the solution gets diluted to a certain extent. So I was trying to balance that out and thinking, is there a is there a solution in the social sector, probably not for profit sector, where for complex socio-economic problems, uh, it's better to approach it from a not-for-profit lens than from a for-profit lens.
Mhm.
So those two things were going on in my head, and that's when I started to work with Udaiti on the problem of women's workforce participation. So now to answer your question, given that background, for me, uh, the thing that really excites me is the opportunity to have that impact at scale. And that's what pushes me, that, it's a very complex problem, but the ROI on it will be substantial. We are also, as a country, standing a lot of convergence of factors that is making it a very exciting time. When you say when the tide comes and it lifts all boats, as a country, in India, we are at a place where we've been growing year after year sustainably now. There is the demographic dividend, there is the digital public infrastructure, there is a lot of energy now in the country about the self belief that we will be able to grow to be a developed country, a Viksit Bharat, as we are saying. So I think that energy is something that really keeps me going, and is very exciting. So it's very exciting right now to be working on a problem that will contribute very meaningfully to the growth of the country as we navigate this stage. The second is that I've always I've always enjoyed the process of learning, and all of these S curves that I was talking about, each of those meant very steep learning curves. And here, I'd always been an engineer, product marketer, working with tech products, and suddenly here I'm surrounded by people who talk economics, and a lot of the people in my team are that. I'm thinking about public policy, which I'd really not thought about. So it's been a steep learning curve. I'm enjoying that process. And lastly, I get the opportunity to work with some of the really smartest people uh, who are part of my team, part of my extended team on our board, donors, grantees, and not just really smart, but people having a social conscience and who are kind of uh, they might have different beliefs and might be looking at different problems, but in their own way, they are trying to make a dent in a problem that can really support India's growth journey.
Wow. I don't know if you know this, but I went to India for the first time almost 40 years ago. And
Yes.
my grandparents, my mom is adopted, but she was adopted as a teenager to uh, to people that have known her parents. Her parents were killed during World War II, and her adopted parents, before World War II began, moved to India and lived there. So I grew up, and this is things that comes back in the childhood. So in my house, in a little town called Acariwa in Venezuela, and then we moved to El Limon. El Limon is not even in the map. I always joke about it. You can't find where I grew up because it's not in the map. It's too small. But in Acariwa was a rice area. My parents had a farm. We had in our home, we had figurines that were Indians. Nobody knew about India. This is Latin America in a rice field in the middle of nowhere. And it was so exotic. And my mom used to tell us stories that her parents told her. By the time I was born, both of her adopted parents have died as well. And I remember vividly this little elephant that had silver bells, and my mom would shake it, and we felt we were in a magical land. So it's it has been interesting to watch the progress of the country through decades, and so fortunate to go back and say, "Oh my gosh!" So I'm very inspired by India and the Indian people, and not a lot of people connect with that. So I think it's really magical that we can talk about it and bring this to the world in a very sort of personal, humane. You're a person, I'm a person, and connecting all different continents, hopefully people. What do you think are the biggest opportunities and challenges, and how is it related to the whole world? How can we uplift the world with some of your experiences?
Like you said, Alicia, we thought technology will be the biggest integrator and will bring people together, some of the social media platforms. Um, and we're really so polarized, um, and it can, you know, it's so easy to be in your echo chamber. Um, the, I, okay, I'll leave that. But so one of the most important things and the challenges are, I feel, um, is understand different points of view, and it is extremely hard. Given our current environment, it's becoming harder and harder. So I think one is the ability to keep an open mind and be open to different perspectives uh, from different parts of the world, from different segments of society. The second, I feel, is as this whole new wave of AI is coming, and we are now beginning to think of human versus technology and AI. Um, the what I worry about is some of these systemic biases getting more deeply ingrained because of that versus getting diluted. So, um, the big challenge is, we made some progress and then we go back, and then we make progress, then we go back. How do we decouple talent from geography or gender, uh, you know, your demographic profile? If whether it is talent, if you're working hard, then uh, you should be able to get the opportunities, and we decouple it from the lottery of birth. um, and right now we are in a place where inequality is rising, polarization is rising, people are getting more and more stuck in their own worldviews. um, we are so biases also can get even more deeply
Ingrained.
ingrained. And therefore, I think that's the big challenge, is to be able to build some of those bridges, so that we are open to connecting with people who have different points of view, people who are from different geographies, people who come from different segments, so that we can bridge some of these gaps. And it's not easy. It is hard, and one needs to make a conscious effort to do that.
I agree with you. My concern with AI is that AI is not meant to question you; it's meant to sustain your observation. So it brings prejudiced. It gives prejudice a reason to exist where it shouldn't. So that's a topic for another conversation.
Yes, yes.
I want to, we're right on the time. We're actually a little bit past, but I want to thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your time with us. I, I'm just so happy that we met, and I'm so happy that we're talking now. Pooja, how can we contact you? We're going to put the notes and the information about the podcast. How can we be useful to you?
Yeah, my LinkedIn profile, people can connect me through LinkedIn or through my email address. And I think you're already doing such a big service by bringing some of these conversations to the fore, and bringing people from diverse areas here. Um, I'd love to catch up with you and some of the entrepreneurs, founders, investors when I'm in the Bay Area, and really brainstorm ideas with you on how we can take this whole, how do we get to a world where there is gender parity, and and women have exactly the same opportunities that men do.
Thank you so much for being with us, Pooja.
Thank you so much, Alicia, and you have a wonderful time in Davos, and I'll catch up with you again soon.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I met Pooja before COVID when I went to India uh, to be a keynote speaker at a big event called Shiro's. And I was an investor there. And I did run a program called Women Get Funded for 6 years. And Shiro's was a sponsor. Then I invested. Shiro's created something called Mahila Money, which is a bank, a neobank for women in India. And it's not charity. We were just talking about that. Is just access to financial services, insurance, credit cards, and all of that. Pooja has so much wisdom, and is the type of people that I really value because without being bragging about all her accomplishments, she gets things done, and we need more people doing extraordinary things. I hope you join me in the next episode. This is your host, Alicia Castillo Holley. You're seeing Wealthy. Thanks for tuning in to our Wealthy Talks. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. To stay connected, visit us at wealthing.com. This is Alicia Castillo Holley, your host, and until next time, yours in Wealthing.